Fireside Tales. Hello. I'm Merlin Mililli. Welcome to my fireside, where I tell tales. And they get weird, and I tell tales within the tales, and they get weirder. So first we get weird with the tale of the Grateful Dead here at Fireside Tales. Every week I've been telling it in a different way. Got an exciting new way for you today. But I tell the story of the Grateful Dead because it's a story about reincarnation. And I'd really like to use this show to enlighten people as to what reincarnation is, because people really seem to not know. So, the story of the Grateful Dead, as I heard it from a Grateful Dead fan, which is a deadhead, which is me, by a fire, which I am. I unusually was into the Grateful Dead at 12 in the 1980s. Anyway, the story of the Grateful Dead, as I heard it from a deadhead by a fire. Now begin. Bless you, dear. There was a traveler. Along the road she was traveling upon was a village. In the village, all the villagers were crowded around a dead body. And they were arguing, squabbling, bickering over the dead man's debts. As the traveler moved through town and witnessed this atrocious sight, she decided that she would end it. And so she paid the dead man's debts, and she paid for a proper burial, and she prayed over the dead man's body. And she traveled on. And then, many years later, decades later, the traveler, from the beginning of the story, happens upon a life or death situation in which a stranger comes out of nowhere and saves her life. She's so surprised and, thank you. Who are you? Why did you save my life? You saved my life. And the stranger says, I am the Grateful Dead. It's the dead man. But the stranger is reincarnated in a new body. Clearly a healthy body that can save another's life. So people seem a little confused about that story and about reincarnation in general. I am a firm believer in reincarnation. I am a druid high priestess and a shaman, and in my shamanic journey and my priestess journey, I meditated a lot and for many, many years, decades even. And I have access meditatively to a place called the Akasha or the Akashic Records. And it's a library of books, and in it, every soul has a book. Now, it's not a physical library like one that you normally go to, but it's a metaphysical library. It's a meditative library. You can only get there through meditation. And in my book, I discovered that my very last life was that of Ron Pigpen McKernan from the Grateful Dead. He died the day I was born. And not like in a weird way, like I didn't have, a sex change. There wasn't any kind of weird foul play or I wasn't born again Christian. I was born again in another body. Little tiny baby me was born to my mother, Eileen. she so Ron died. I believe they cremated him, so that body doesn't remain anymore, and his soul went on to become me and who I've become. Go figure, I'm a blues musician. So I wear many hats. And this is probably why I've been many people. Though they say that, well, they don't say, spirits say. I've also been able to hear and communicate with the spirit realm since I was a child in this body. I think that might be one of my threads. I have these threads of things that are consistent throughout each of my lifetimes, and there were many of them. There's one of the threads seems to be for me and for others, which is why spirits have this theory in the spirit realm. They think that people reincarnate when they are murdered. So if you get your time cut short, you get to come back and try again. But you have to start all over, all anew. So in our second episode, we went all the way back to the beginning of my book in the Akashic Records. And we discovered my first life. Go figure, I was a shaman. And how I moved interdimensionally and then had to pay a penalty for having moved interdimensionally. If you want to know more about it, you have to watch the episode 2, Fireside Tales, Mililli Studios channel. subscribe. I need more subscribers. So, nonetheless, I paid a penalty. I had, for 300 years, I only existed as a cloud bird for straddling dimensions. There's penalties to be paid for things. We discussed karma in another episode. So, I last left you at my watermark. In my book, there's a watermark. It seems to be from the Great Flood. And it's like right where time reset. Like right where BC changed to AD. It's a little strange that the flood happened there. I think it flooded before I actually died. In that life where the watermark is. Because I remember being on a ship. I last left you at being the Oracle of Delphi. Being on a ship. And, we went by what should have been France. We went by what should have been England. We went by what should have been Scotland. Or Ireland, rather. But we only found Scotland because it was high ground. And then the waters receded. And as they receded, the Druids, where I had been given refuge as the oracle, receded with the water line. Because salt water is very important to a lot of ceremony. I still cleanse all of my crystals with salt water. I put Epsom salts in my bath. It's very healing and cleansing. Nonetheless, the watermark. And I had been kidnapped by the Greeks from Sumeria. So I went from Sumeria to Greece. Then the city of Delphi was sacked. And I went from Delphi to Scotland. So I went like a pyramid. So we started in ancient Peru. Then we went to ancient Egypt. Well, no, we started in ancient Peru. Then we went to high Earth. Then we went to ancient Tibet. And then we went to ancient Egypt. And then we went to ancient Sumeria. And the oracle was born in Sumeria. And then she traveled to Greece and was killed by the Greeks. Found and killed by the Greeks in Scotland. Probably because it was the only land jutting out. And it was easy to find people there then. So, I was born in my next life in the other dimension, in another dimension. I wanted to try it out and not have to straddle and pay a penalty. But some things just don't work out like you plan. So, in my next life, I was born in the other dimension. My mother was the leader. In this dimension, women are the rulers. And she didn't have a counterpart. My father was the Merlin of Britain, the first Merlin of Britain. And I know what you're saying is that he was a myth. Well, he kind of was. If he traveled between dimensions, sometimes he didn't exist there, right? Like, if he traveled from this dimension where there is YouTube and Fireside Tales with Uther, who happened to be King of Britain then, to the dimension I was born in. Before I was born, where he met and fell in love with my mother. Uther met and fell in love with Arthur's mother. Arthur and I were both born in this dimension. Not to the same mother and father, but we were born in that dimension, since we were sort of linked in a weird way. So, I was learning how to become my mother. I was learning how to be ruler of the land and all that came with that. And Merlin and Uther had taken Arthur to this dimension where there's Fireside Tales and YouTube. And they did kind of hide him away, but only to assimilate him with people here. And I know you're saying, this is all a myth. What are you talking about? But it's not. And I knew it wasn't. Because this is all in my book. These people were real. I've spoken to their spirits. Especially Merlin's. He was my father. We speak all the time. Still. Excuse me. Nonetheless. Graham Phillips. I was so excited when he wrote his books about Merlin and Arthur. Read them, they're excellent. And he found their graves, and he found them hidden in weird language and changes to history, which, you know, they love to erase, especially anything to do with women. Because it's his story, not her story. So, at the watermark in my book, there had been war and flood and famine and, you know, signs that people were doing things really wrong. And it's a lot like now. We're really messing up the earth, and we need to make some serious changes, or we're not going to be here on earth. I'm not sure we need to save the planet, but we might need to save humanity, because she's trying to get rid of us. I feel like all these earth changes are very similar to what happened to the planet right before the flood. So, I am born Merlin's daughter, being trained to be ruler of the land. Arthur is being trained to be ruler of his land, son of King of Britain. I'm not sure, I don't think he was being raised that way, which is why it's that way in the story. I think he was being raised as a knight, which he was a squire, I guess. So, nonetheless, around 300s AD, late 300s AD, I was born in this other dimension. When I was a teenager, roughly, my father, Merlin of Britain, who was a real guy, talked to Graham Phillips about it, brought me from my dimension to this dimension to advise Arthur when he became king. Until Arthur became king, he was still a boy then. I was a little older than Arthur. Until Arthur became king, I was to teach the priestesses on Avalon, which was a nearby island. We used to boat in to celebrate our solstices and equinoxes with the priests at Stonehenge. And there weren't really castles, and there was nothing called Camelot. Graham Phillips found that to be true too. Nonetheless, so I was learning metalworking in the other dimension for some reason, probably because I liked it. I like working with metal still. I took metal shop in high school. I was the only girl in my class. But I forged this knife, and I managed to get it from one dimension to the other when I came to teach the priestesses at Avalon as a teenager. When I meditate and I go to my book in the library there, I don't really read it. It's not like a reading thing. I put my hands on it meditatively and I see things, memories. But it'll be a whole scenario of stuff. Like, I'll share with you one that I saw about Ninnian. I was named Ninnian by my mother, but I was called Nimue when I came here. So my father, when I first arrived here, before I started teaching, I needed some books to teach from. So he sent me with 3 gold coins. They had what I thought was Julius Caesar on them, but apparently all the Caesars, they even called them Caesars after Julius, were called Caesar, and they all wore the laurel leaves on their heads, so their portraits, crudely done on coin, then were kind of all the same, so who knows which emperor it was. But nonetheless, I was given 3 gold coins that were from, had the emperor on them, so they were Roman coins, I guess. And I went to this place. It was an island. I had to go by boat. I went on to an island that was a library, and it had these big, tall pillars, and it was pretty much just the library. The island was really, really small, and it was called like I always wanted to call it like something to do with hippos, but I always equate it with hippos because there actually were hippos in the water there, so it was kind of scary, and they're a little scary. I remember them being scary, but nonetheless, I keep saying that. I'll stop. The library wasn't like a library that we have now. It was more like a bookstore. You had to buy your books, which I had 3 coins for 3 books. I was to buy 3 books. And one of them was Socrates. I'm not sure what the other 2 were. And it wasn't like Plato's Socrates. This was way before that. It was about the late 3rd century AD. And here I am on this boat with hippos traveling to this weird library. This is my first moments, really, in this dimension. I've come from somewhere where women rule things, and I haven't really been told much about this place. So I'm sent to this library to get these 3 books, and you have to wait for the scribe to write out your book. So I have to wait 3 days near these hippos for these books. My books are finally done. Comes time for me to pay my coinage. I go to pay the scribes, and I'm jacked up by these guards, these soldiers, these people with swords and capes and stuff and things. And they were scary and big, and they jacked me up and asked me where I got my coins from. And I said, from the Druid priests. And I had been taught many languages, so I was able to communicate with them. Thank goodness. And they gave me my books, and they sent me on my merry way. And I don't believe I ever went back there. And I went and taught on Avalon the priestesses until Arthur was made king. And Merlin was sure that Arthur was going to be king. And Uther was his father, so we all knew it was sort of inevitable. But for his own safety, they did keep him hidden away. And I have another memory from my book where I had forged, doing my metalwork, I forged a little knife, and I got it. I think I said that already. I got it from one dimension to the other, and had my little knife, and I was having this conversation with my father out in the forest somewhere near this big boulder. And I was cutting up an apple, and I was asking him if I could please go back home. I just wanted to go home, and I just want to go home. And could I please just go home? And I want to see my mother. I miss my mother. I miss my friends. I want to go home. And he says no. And I get so mad at him. And I finish my apple, and I huck the core, and then I see just want to go home. And I huck the knife. Sticks in the boulder. And Merlin can't pull it out. But I can. And I do. And so he says to me, well, okay, you can go back. You can go home on one condition. And I say, what? Anything. I'll do anything. He says, you forge Arthur a sword. And he gives me some symbols to put on it. And I've been taught as a priestess and a ruler, I know some things. And I had been some people that knew some things. And so I also not only forged the sword, but blessed the sword and gave it a whole lot of magic. And then I brought the sword back. And then Merlin stuck it in this stone. And knowing that Arthur was born in the dimension that I was born in, he would also be able to pull it out. But none of the other people would be able to pull it out. So right there, Merlin just said, I proclaim that the next king of Britain will pull this sword from this stone. And, you know, this was back before television. People came and they tried, and Merlin let them. You know, big crowd attracted it and kept Arthur in the shadows, and then brought Arthur in, little Arthur. He was about 12, I think. They bring him in, and he pulls this thing out, just like the Disney movie. Except it wasn't in the town square, and there wasn't all that. But nonetheless, I think my story's better. And it's true. So I forged the sword to protect Arthur. And then I was brought here, not just to teach the priestesses, but to guide Arthur as his advisor. And I had to be a secret advisor because I was a woman. And it just was not the time of woman. So I swore oaths. A lot of oaths as advisor to the king. Merlin made me swear all these oaths, and many of them held. And we're going to have to talk about my oaths in our next episode about Ninnian. I'm going to make a Ninnian 2 episode for next week because there's just too much information here to pack in a one episode and be able to sing Deja Vu for you in a different way. So far, I've sung in a different way each time, just a hair different. Today I'm doing it with the amped 12 string. I've sung with the 12 string, but I have not amped it. So we'll see how that works out. So I'll leave you with a little teaser in that one of my oaths I swore was to Galahad. And he was real too. So it gets a little spicy. Not too spicy, but a little spicy. Oh, so I'm going to sing Deja Vu for you. And leave you at Ninnian. Did it, did it, did it, did it, do did it, did it, did it, do it, do 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 One, two, three, four. If I had ever been here before, I would probably know just what to do. Don't you? If I had ever been here before and another time around the wheel, I would probably know just how to deal with all of you. And I feel like I've been here before. Feel like I've been here before, and you know, it makes me wonder what's going on under the ground. Do you know? Don't you wonder? What's going on down under you? La da da, la da da, la da da da, la da da da. Some of us. Probably way too many times. So, reincarnation. I am a firm believer. I hope you understand it a little more. I think understanding can help us to get along, maybe find some peace in our lives. So, next week we'll discuss Ninnian some more and her oaths to Galahad and Arthur and Merlin. Oh, strong oaths. Thanks for watching. Catch us next week.